While taking photos at the tourist attraction, I moved around 3 or 4 times to find the best angle. I aimed the camera at my boyfriend Shawn Jacobson and called out 3 times, "Hey, look this way." He seemed unable to hear me. His eyes were fixed on something in the distance instead. Then Nadia Sparks, my best friend, fumbled for her phone and called out to him, "Look at the camera." He immediately struck a pose and smiled tenderly into her camera. A young couple saw the photos on Nadia's phone and teased her. "Wow, your boyfriend must really love you. You can see it in his eyes." Nadia's face instantly turned bright red, and Shawn cleared his throat awkwardly. I looked down at my camera and saw that I had only captured a third of his profile. It looked like a paparazzi shot. Ever since we were kids, they had always ignored me. The two of them acted like I never had an opinion. As teenagers, they always excitedly picked where we would go, assuming I'd just follow along. When we grew up, the two of them decided to study medicine. They never bothered to ask what I wanted and signed me up for a medical program too. Later, they became the ER's dream team, while all my hard work only earned me a place as just a nurse. When I looked up, they were already walking side by side toward the next spot for photos. They probably expected me to just follow them, but I turned around and walked in the opposite direction. All this time, I had always stayed one step behind them, but even I had a day when I no longer wanted to follow them. Shawn Jacobson didn't realize I was missing until 3 hours later. The message he sent me was cold and distant. "Where did you run off to? Did you get lost again while buying us drinks at the entrance?" I couldn't recall how many times something like this had happened. He only seemed to remember I existed when he needed something from me. I didn't reply and continued with my work. The head nurse, Carla Porter, had just finished making her rounds when she saw me. Surprised, she asked, "You saved up your annual leave to go on a trip with Shawn and Nadia. Why are you back so soon?" My hands froze as I sorted through the medication. They could finish an emergency surgery together with ease and earn a week of extra time off. But to go on a trip with them, I had to use my precious annual leave. Yet the trip I had been looking forward to for so long only made me feel invisible. 3 more hours passed before Nadia Sparks walked to the nurse's station carrying a huge stuffed animal. She gave me a playful wink. "Janet, this is the prize Shawn and I got for pretending to be a couple," she said. "We actually had to hug each other for 30 minutes straight. I'm exhausted. But it was worth it to make my best friend happy." I had suggested joining the hugging contest earlier, but Shawn had brushed me off and called it childish, so I never brought it up again. But the moment Nadia said she wanted to do it, he had no problem pretending to be her boyfriend. I was the one actually dating him, not her. An ache I couldn't put into words settled in my chest. When I didn't take the stuffed animal from Nadia, Shawn reluctantly shoved it into my arms. "You left without saying a word. Nadia was worried about you, and now you're giving us attitude," he said. As soon as he said that, all the co-workers around us looked at me with disdain. Nadia turned to glare at him, then looked at me and said sweetly, "He's always been bad with his words. Don't mind him." "Janet, are you still upset about the photos? Listen, I have so many embarrassing pictures of him on my phone. I'll show you." She pulled up her photo album, pretending to get back at him. Shawn, who was always so serious and proper, looked silly and playful through her camera. Meanwhile, the 1267 photos of him on my phone were all ones I had secretly taken from different angles. Shawn wrapped an arm around Nadia's shoulders and tickled her. He grumbled, "I told you not to show those to other people. Just wait till I get even with you." Nadia squealed and laughed. "Stop. I'm sorry." I stood there, stunned. To him, I really was just another outsider. I went straight upstairs and knocked on the hospital director's office door. "Dr. Colton, I've decided to accept the overseas training opportunity," I said. Charles Colton looked excited, but concern soon appeared on his face. "I'm glad you agreed to go," he said. "But have you discussed it with your mentor?" Shawn was my mentor. When I first joined the hospital, Nadia and I were both medical interns under him. But only Nadia was kept on by the hospital. Throughout my residency, I never made a single mistake, and even earned special commendations 3 times. Shawn brushed it off as nothing more than doing my job. Once, I stayed up all night finishing medical records and didn't go home for a full day. He said I was only trying to catch up because I wasn't naturally talented. But when Nadia saved an epilepsy patient on her own, he flooded Charles's office with glowing recommendations until she was given a special placement in the ER. Later, I slowly realized that the harder I tried to catch up to them, the farther away they seemed. I shook my head and gave a small, resigned smile. There's no need to discuss it with him. I've already made my decision. By the time we left the hospital that night, a violent storm had already started. Shawn opened the only umbrella and pulled Nadia close without a second thought, while I stood behind them in a daze. I had forgotten to bring one. He paused for a moment before turning to me. "I'll take Nadia to the car first, then come back for you." Before I could say anything, he was already shielding Nadia as they ran into the downpour. The cold, damp wind cut through me, and I couldn't stop sneezing. An hour passed, and I was shivering from the cold when I called Shawn. It took a full 20 minutes before he finally answered. I could hear a game playing in the background. Shawn sounded frustrated at being interrupted, with a brief moment of confusion in his voice. Sorry, I forgot, he said. You're unbelievable. If you couldn't wait, you should have just called a cab. You didn't need to stand there this whole time. Hold on. I'll call a cab for you. The next moment, Nadia's voice came through the phone. She complained. Hurry up and cover me. We're about to lose. He cut off the call without hesitation. I stood at the hospital entrance, my face soaked with rain and tears that I couldn't seem to wipe away. I ran 2 miles through the rain before I finally managed to hail a cab. The driver handed me a pack of tissues and couldn't help but say, there have been a lot of cases of women being harassed around here lately. You're a young lady, and you still dared to run around in the rain? Didn't your boyfriend even try to come pick you up? Hearing that, I finally realized the danger. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. There really had been a lot of creeps around the hospital lately. Back then, Shawn had even ordered pepper spray online and put it in Nadia's bag. He hadn't gotten one for me. When he saw how disappointed I looked, he pulled me into his arms and said, You have a boyfriend to protect you. Why would you need that? But at this very moment, I had neither the pepper spray nor someone to protect me. When I got home and opened the door, Shawn was drying Nadia's hair. She was wearing the matching pajamas Shawn and I had bought as a couple. At the sound of the door, Shawn turned off the hairdryer. His expression darkened slightly. You're finally back, he said. Nadia and I were so worried about you. We were about to go look for you if you didn't come back soon. The two of them were in matching pajamas, already showered and with their hair dried. They clearly didn't look like they were about to leave the apartment to find me. My eyes welled up, and the hurt I had kept buried finally came to the surface. Did you ever think about what could happen to me out there in the middle of the night? I'm your girlfriend, not her. Shawn froze for a moment. Nadia's face turned bright red. She pushed him away and ran out without looking back. Shawn clicked his tongue and was about to chase after her, but stopped. What's gotten into you today? You messed up and now you're throwing a tantrum, he snapped. Nadia and I are on shift tomorrow. If there's a surgery, you'll assist us. Think of it as a way to redeem yourself. After saying that, he chased after Nadia without looking back. I stood there drenched from head to toe. There was mud covering my pant legs and the ground around my feet. Somehow, I was always the one left waiting. I didn't even get the chance to say no. The next day, I woke up in a daze. When I checked my temperature, it was nearly 104 degrees. My mind drifted in and out of consciousness, and I didn't even have the strength to open my eyes. I called them more than a dozen times, but neither Shawn nor Nadia answered. I had no choice but to call emergency services. The moment I heard Shawn's voice, I felt like I had finally found my salvation. Shawn, I have a fever. Why is it you? His tone immediately hardened. I didn't pick up, so you called the emergency line? You're a healthcare worker yourself. How could you treat your job like a joke? Nadia's panicked voice came from the other end. She sounded like she was about to cry. Mom suddenly twisted her ankle. She can't move at all right now, Nadia said. I called an ambulance. Shawn, please come help me. Her crying drowned out my pleas for help, and the call was immediately disconnected. In the end, a co-worker realized I hadn't shown up for work and called an ambulance to take me to the hospital. When I opened my eyes again, the doctor on duty sighed. Brain damage caused by high fever is irreversible. You studied medicine too, so you should know better. I did. But as the attending physician, Shawn should have understood that even better than me. Shawn didn't find out I was hospitalized with a fever until late that night. He had just finished making his rounds and hadn't even had time to take off his white coat. He picked up the chart by my bedside and checked it. Your fever is still lingering, he said. Let's add another dose of medicine and see if it helps. His touch on my forehead was gentle, but my gaze was cold. I told you I had a fever. Why didn't you help me? I asked. Shawn stopped what he was doing and frowned. The elderly aren't like younger people. What if she broke a bone, he said. You're a medical professional. You should know which situation is more urgent. Yet his own motto had always been that every patient mattered equally. Just then, Nadia walked in with a guilty look on her face. She said, My mom's injury came at a bad time. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken up the ambulance and caused Janet to end up hospitalized. Shawn glanced at me icily before comforting her in a gentle tone. There's no such thing as good or bad timing with accidents, he said. Janet has always been overly sensitive since she was little. You know that. My voice suddenly turned cold. The hospital has other ambulances. The smile in Shawn's eyes vanished, replaced by annoyance. But you're okay now, aren't you? He sounded impatient. Nadia was crying so hard that I panicked. I didn't think about anything else because I knew you could always take care of yourself. Maybe the ones who cried the loudest always got the most attention. Perhaps I was just never Shawn's priority. But this time, I almost died. This incident was different from all the times he had taken her side. The hurt I had buried rose to my throat, but I swallowed it down and said, Shawn, let's break up. After saying that, I turned around and closed my eyes. Nadia grabbed the corner of my clothes from behind, looking so anxious she was on the verge of tears. "Janet, I'm really sorry," she apologized. "If you want to blame someone, blame me. Please don't be mad." The next moment, Shawn laughed bitterly behind me. "Don't you know what she's like?" he said. "She probably learned that little push and pull trick from something she saw online." Then he added, "When has she ever had an attitude? She has only started acting differently recently. I don't know what got into her." The two of them started mocking me again, just like they always had, for being so quiet and reserved. Neither of them noticed the flight notification that popped up on my phone. Before I left the country, my final surgery was one where I assisted Shawn and Nadia. A male patient had just been in a serious car accident, and his condition was critical. During the surgery, I accurately reported the patient's vital signs. Heart rate is 120. Prepare to administer medication. But unexpectedly, Nadia gave the injection using the dosage for a heart rate of 125. The monitor let out a sharp alarm. As the head of the ER, Shawn suddenly ordered in a stern voice, "Get out! Have Dr. Slade take over." After 3 hours of fighting to save the patient, the two of them worked together to finish the surgery successfully. Shawn walked out of the operating room and removed his mask. His expression was dark. "What the hell happened back there?" he asked. "How could you make such a basic mistake?" Nadia's eyes immediately welled up with tears as she bit her lip. "But I clearly heard 125. It's my fault for getting it wrong." Shawn immediately turned his questioning gaze toward me. I tensed up and quickly explained. "You all heard me. I said 120. Impatience flashed in Shawn's eyes. "A mistake is a mistake. You have to take responsibility for it." With that, he wrote a big failed on my performance evaluation form. The annual awards at the end of the year were more than just recognition. Recipients also received 3 times their regular year-end bonus. I had put in far more effort than anyone else. I made the hospital my second home, often working non-stop for 24 hours at a time. My eyes reddened with tears, and my voice grew hoarse. Everyone voted in favor of me. But Shawn only responded coldly, "It needs to be judged based on all factors." Behind him, a small, triumphant smile appeared on Nadia's otherwise sweet-looking face. After 5 years of working tirelessly and sacrificing so much to get where I was, everything came to nothing right then. There were 5 hours left until my flight took off. I packed my things from the nurses' station into a cardboard box. The other nurses looked at me like I was trouble, and made sure to stay away. Shawn walked over with a group of interns. "I won't punish you too harshly this time, so I'll transfer you to the front desk," he said. "You have the most patience, so the job suits you. Submit a written statement and apologize to the patient and his family. After that, we'll put this incident behind us." He stared down at me, expecting me to lower my head like I always had before and keep apologizing. But I didn't say a word. I carried the heavy box and quickly walked out of the hospital. By the time Shawn messaged again, urging me to hand in my written statement, I was already on a flight headed elsewhere. Nadia was punished with extra shifts, and Shawn stayed at the hospital with her for 3 whole days. He thought this was the perfect chance to keep Janet Linden waiting for a few more days. When the 3-day punishment ended, Shawn arrived at the nurses' station early to pick Janet up after her shift. He ran into Carla, who had just come out. "Could you call Janet out? I'm here to take her home." Carla stared at him in disbelief. Her next words left him stunned. "Dr. Jacobson, Janet has gone abroad for further training." Carla's words hung in the sterile air of the nurses' station like a cloud of frost. Shawn blinked once, then twice, a faint, condescending smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Carla, stop joking around. She's probably sitting in the break room hiding because she knows she's in trouble over the dosage mistake." Carla didn't smile back. She adjusted her clipboard, her eyes cold as steel. "I don't joke about my staff, Dr. Jacobson." Janet turned in her badge, handed over her room key to the hospital dormitory, and signed her departure papers. Yesterday afternoon, Dr. Colton personally signed off on her transfer to the Zurich International Medical Center. Her flight left 3 hours ago. Shawn's smile vanished. His skin lost all its color, turning a sickly, papery white. "Zurich? That's an 18-month advanced clinical fellowship. She's just a surgical nurse. She can't just leave." "She can and she did," Carla said, leaning forward. "And for your information, she wasn't just a nurse. She was recommended for the fellowship by 3 senior surgeons from the state board who reviewed her independent research on emergency triage protocols. The board was stunned she hadn't been promoted to a clinical assistant years ago. But I suppose you were too busy writing failed on her evaluations to notice." Shawn stood frozen in the hallway as Carla turned her back on him and walked away. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Nadia. "Shawn, the shifts are over. Let's go get hot pot to celebrate. My treat." He ignored it. His hands trembled as he pulled up Janet's chat window. He typed frantically, "Where are you? Answer me. This isn't funny, Janet. You can't just leave your job without telling me." The message sent, but instantly a red exclamation point appeared beside it. "You are no longer in this contact's friend list." A strange, suffocating panic flared in his chest, a feeling he had never experienced in his entire life. Janet had always been there. Since they were 6 years old, sitting on the curb waiting for the school bus, she had been 2 steps behind him. When he walked fast, she ran to keep up. When he decided to go to medical school, she spent 18 hours a day studying just to pass the entrance exam alongside him. She didn't leave. Janet couldn't leave. He threw on his jacket and drove like a madman across the city to her apartment. He slammed his palm against her door, shouting her name until the elderly neighbor opened her door to glare at him. "She moved out yesterday morning," the neighbor grumbled. "A moving crew took 2 small boxes. That was it. Left the key in the mailbox." Shawn reached into the metallic box by the door. His fingers brushed against a cold piece of metal attached to a familiar blue lanyard. Beside the key sat a small, folded piece of paper. He opened it with shaking fingers. Written in her neat, precise handwriting were just 2 lines. "Shawn, I'm returning the apartment key and the rain umbrella you left here 2 years ago. Don't look for me. I'm finally walking in my own direction." 2 weeks passed. At first, Shawn convinced himself that Janet was merely throwing an elaborate tantrum. "She'll be back," he told Nadia over dinner one night, though his eyes kept drifting toward his phone. "She doesn't speak fluent German. She doesn't know anyone in Switzerland. She'll realize how hard it is out there and come back within a month." Nadia giggled, popping a cherry tomato into her mouth. "Of course she will. Janet can't survive without us. She's always been so dependent on you, Shawn." But as the 3rd week began, the yar began to fracture at the seams. For 5 years, Janet had been the invisible glue holding Shawn's department together. It was Janet who double-checked every chart before surgery, catching minor dictation errors that Shawn made when he was fatigued. It was Janet who knew which patients had rare drug allergies that weren't clearly marked on their electronic health records. It was Janet who quietly managed the night shifts, prepped the surgical trays with absolute perfection, and handled angry patient families so Shawn never had to deal with the public relations fallout. Without her, chaos erupted. "Dr. Jacobson," a junior resident yelled, rushing into the break room where Shawn was drinking coffee. "Patient in bed 4 is having an acute anaphylactic reaction." He was administered penicillin. Shawn dropped his cup, black coffee spilling across his trousers. "What? Who ordered penicillin? It's marked red on his chart." "Dr. Sparks wrote the order," the resident panicked. "She said she checked the chart, but the cross-allergy note was filed in the secondary section." Shawn rushed into the bay, his heart hammering as he threw himself into emergency resuscitation. It took 40 minutes of high-stress intervention to stabilize the patient. When he dragged himself back to his office, furious, he slammed the door and rounded on Nadia. "How could you miss a cross-allergy flag? That's basic ER protocol." Nadia's eyes immediately filled with tears. She bit her lower lip, trembling. I was tired, Shawn. Usually, Janet goes through the secondary filings and highlights them in pink for me before the shift start. I thought she did it." Shawn stared at her, a cold sensation washing down his spine. "Janet hasn't worked here for nearly a month, Nadia." "I know. I'm used to her doing it." Nadia sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "Why are you yelling at me? You never used to yell at me. You're taking your anger at Janet out on me." Shawn opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, his door was thrown open. Hospital Director Charles Colton stood in the doorway, his face dark as a thundercloud. Beside him stood 2 representatives from the State Medical Malpractice Board. "Dr. Jacobson, Dr. Sparks," Colton said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "In my office. Now." The director's office was suffocatingly quiet. Colton didn't offer them seats. He sat behind his heavy desk, tossing 2 thick folders onto the wood. 3 days ago, the hospital board received a formal request from the State Disciplinary Committee to review the surgical audio logs from the accident case. "Last month," Colton said, eyeing Shawn sternly. "The case where you failed Nurse Linden on her evaluation." Shawn's posture stiffened. "Dr. Colton, that was a standard internal disciplinary matter." Silence. Colton slammed his palm on the desk. "We pulled the high-definition ambient audio recorded by the boom microphone above the operating table. Do you want to hear what it captured, Shawn?" Colton pressed play on a computer monitor. The crisp, unmistakable voice of Janet echoed through the speakers. "Heart rate is 120. Prepare to administer medication." A beat later, Nadia's voice responded, slightly flustered. Administering. For 125. Then the monitor alarm blared, followed by Shawn's harsh order. Get out. Have Dr. Slade take over. The audio stopped. The room fell into a dead silence. Nurse Linden reported the vital signs with absolute precision, Colton said, staring directly at Nadia, whose face had gone entirely gray. Dr. Sparks made a critical dosage calculation error due to inattention. And you, Dr. Jacobson, intentionally falsified a performance evaluation to strip Nurse Linden of her year-end bonus and transfer her to the front desk, protecting Dr. Sparks from a formal reprimand. Dr. Colton, listen to me, Shawn panicked, taking a step forward. Nadia was under immense stress. I don't care about her stress, Colton roared. You used your position as chief resident to suppress a skilled, dedicated medical professional while covering up gross Negligence. Nurse Linden submitted a full copy of her personal work logs and time-stamped shift reports before she left. Do you know what they revealed? Colton threw open the second folder. Over the last 3 years, Nurse Linden logged over 800 hours of uncompensated overtime. She authored 3 major trauma response protocols that were submitted under your name, Shawn. She caught 14 separate medication errors made by Dr. Sparks, quietly rectifying them so this hospital wouldn't be sued for malpractice. Shawn felt as though the air had been kicked out of his lungs. He stumbled back a half step. She wrote those protocols? You didn't even know? Colton let out a cruel, mocking laugh. You thought you were a genius, didn't you, Jacobson? You thought you were the ER star surgeon. The truth is, you were running on Nurse Linden's engine. And now that she's gone, your department is collapsing. Colton stood up, pulling 2 official documents from his drawer. Effective immediately, Dr. Jacobson is stripped of his title as chief resident and placed on 6 months of unpaid administrative suspension pending a full board review. Dr. Sparks, your medical license is being suspended for 6 months, and you are required to retake your clinical pharmacology boards. Nadia burst into hysterics, dropping to her knees. No. Shawn, do something. Tell him. My career will be ruined. Shawn looked down at Nadia, weeping on the floor, grabbing at his trousers just as she had done 100 times before. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the urge to shield her. He felt a deep, terrifying wave of revulsion. He didn't help her up. He didn't say a word. He slowly turned around and walked out of the office, his legs feeling like lead. Zurich, Switzerland. 1 year later. The morning sun reflected off the snow-capped peaks of the Alps, bathing the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Zurich International Medical Center in bright, clear light. In the state-of-the-art hybrid operating theater, a complex 8-hour neurovascular reconstruction was coming to an end. Bovie, please. A voice said smoothly in crisp, flawless German. The lead surgical assistant handed the electrosurgical pencil over. The surgeon operating Dr. Alexander Vance, a world-renowned pioneer in cerebrovascular surgery, watched the young woman beside him with deep approval. Janet moved with calm, fluid precision. Her eyes were steady above her mask, her hands completely rock-solid as she placed the microsutures into the delicate artery. Perfect tension, Dr. Linden, Dr. Vance murmured, stepping back to let her tie off the final vessel. Your vascular closure technique is superior to most of my senior fellows. Thank you, Dr. Vance, Janet replied softly, her voice filled with a serene, unshakable confidence. After the surgery, Janet walked into the scrub room, pulled off her mask and let her hair down. Over the past year, her life had undergone a total metamorphosis. When she first arrived in Switzerland, she worked 20 hours a day, learning German, mastering advanced surgical techniques, and completing her clinical conversion exams. Dr. Vance had recognized her extraordinary spatial awareness and calm under pressure. Within her first month, transferring her out of nursing and directly into the hospital's prestigious clinical physician track. She was no longer the quiet, invisible girl who stood soaked in the rain waiting for a cab. She was Dr. Janet Linden, a rising star in international neurosurgery. She walked out to the hospital courtyard, holding a warm cup of coffee, breathing in the crisp, clean alpine air. Dr. Linden, a voice called out. Janet turned. Her mentor, Dr. Vance, was walking toward her holding an invitation folder. The World Congress of Emergency Medicine and Neurosurgery is hosting its annual gala in Geneva next week, Vance said, handing her the dossier. I want you to present our team's paper on microvascular stabilization. You'll be the youngest keynote speaker on the panel. Janet smiled, taking the folder. I'd be honored, Dr. Vance. Oh, by the way, Vance added, tapping his chin. A delegation from your old hospital in the States arrived in Geneva yesterday. I believe you're former supervisor, a Dr. Jacobson, is attending as an unaccredited observer. He's been trying to get a seat in our closed seminar. Janet's smile didn't fade. Her pulse didn't jump. The name Shawn Jacobson no longer carried the heavy, suffocating ache it once did. It sounded like the name of a character in a book she had read a long, long time ago. I see, Janet said simply, taking a sip of her coffee. I hope he enjoys the presentation. The grand ballroom of the Hotel de Bergs in Geneva was a sea of black ties, elegant evening gowns, and the bright minds of global medicine. Janet wore a tailored, floor-length navy blue gown that exposed her collarbones, her dark hair styled in soft waves over one shoulder. She stood near the center of the room, surrounded by a group of chief surgeons from Johns Hopkins and Chairite, chatting easily in fluent English and German, laughing at a joke about clinical trial variables. From the shadow of a marble pillar near the entrance, Shawn stood frozen, unable to tear his eyes away. He looked pitiful. His 6-month suspension had ended, but he had been demoted to a secondary clinic staff member. His confidence was shattered, his hair untidy, his suit slightly loose around his shoulders. He had spent his entire savings to fly to Geneva, using every connection he had left just to get a floor pass to the Congress. He had expected to find Janet struggling, perhaps working as an underpaid triage clerk in a foreign city, missing home, waiting for a familiar face. Instead, he found a queen. She radiated a quiet, brilliant aura that made it impossible to look anywhere else. The way she held her wine glass, the way she spoke with authority to world-famous medical directors, the radiant, genuine smile on her face, she was completely, terrifyingly out of his reach. Janet. He choked out, stepping out from behind the pillar. The group of surgeons paused, looking at the disheveled man approaching them. Janet turned slowly. Her clear, bright eyes met his. There was no hatred in them. There was no bitterness. There was only a calm, impenetrable politeness. Dr. Jacobson, she acknowledged, nodding slightly. I didn't realize you were attending the conference. Shawn took 2 steps closer, his hands shaking, his voice cracking. Janet, please. Can I talk to you? Just for 5 minutes. Privately. Please. The surgeons beside Janet looked uncomfortable, but Janet gave them a subtle, reassuring smile. Excuse me for a moment, gentlemen. She walked toward the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva, her silk dress rustling softly against the marble floor. Shawn followed behind her like a desperate ghost. When they stepped out onto the cool balcony, away from the noise of the party, Shawn immediately took a step toward her. Janet, I tried to find you. I went to your apartment. I called the state board. Why did you look for me, Shawn? Janet asked, leaning her arms against the stone balustrade, looking out at the dark waters of the lake. Because I was wrong. Shawn burst out, tears welling in his eyes. I was an idiot. After you left, everything collapsed. The hospital suspended me. Nadia made a massive error, and when the board investigated, they found out about the surgical log. They know I failed you on purpose. Janet raised an eyebrow slightly, but said nothing. I threw Nadia out of my life, Shawn blurted out, stepping closer, his face twisted in desperate agony. She kept crying and blaming me, but I realized I never loved her, Janet. I was just used to her flattering me. I was used to feeling like a hero around her. But it was you. It was always you holding me up. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. He reached out, his trembling hand trying to catch hers. Come back with me, Janet. I'll make it right. We can buy a house together. I'll support your research. We grew up together. You loved me for 20 years. You can't just throw that away. Janet pulled her hand back smoothly, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a profound sense of emptiness. Shawn, she said quietly, you didn't come to Geneva because you realized you loved me. You came here because you lost your chief position, you lost your reputation, and you realized Nadia was useless to your career. Shawn winced as if she had struck him. No, that's not. You loved the feeling of me standing 2 steps behind you, Janet continued, her tone even and cold. You loved having a girl who would wait in the rain for an hour while you played video games with someone else. You loved having a nurse who would write your research papers while you took the credit. You didn't love me, Shawn. You loved my sacrifices. I can change, he sobbed, dropping to one knee right there on the stone balcony, grabbing at the hem of her gown. Janet, please. Don't do this to me. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you built, Janet said softly. She took a step back, pulling her dress out of his fingers. Suddenly, the balcony door opened. Nadia stepped out, wearing a cheap, overly loud sequin dress. She looked haggard, her eyes wild, having followed Shawn all the way from their hotel. Shawn, Nadia shrieked, seeing him on his knees before Janet. Are you crazy? You begged me to come to Switzerland with you, and now you're kneeling to her? She rounded on Janet, her sweet facade completely shattered into ugly, jealous rage. You arrogant bitch. You think you're better than us now because you went abroad. You were just our doormat. You were always just the third wheel. Janet didn't even look at Nadia. She smoothed down her silk gown, stepped past Shawn on the floor, and stopped at the balcony door. She turned her head slightly, looking back at the two of them, Shawn kneeling in tears, Nadia screeching like a harpy beside him, clinging to each other out of sheer, bitter desperation. You two really do belong together, Janet said, her voice carrying clearly over the crisp night air. You deserve every single moment of the life you've made. Janet walked back into the warmth of the grand ballroom. Dr. Vance met her near the doorway, holding 2 fresh glasses of champagne. He handed one to her, glancing subtly over her shoulder at the balcony. Everything all right, Dr. Linden? Never better, Janet smiled, taking a sip of the champagne. Good, Vance said, gesturing toward the front of the room. Because the board has just finalized the global research grants for next year. Your microvascular initiative was awarded the top prize of 2 million Swiss francs. They want you on stage to accept the plaque. Applause began to ripple through the ballroom as the announcer called her name. Dr. Janet Linden. Janet walked toward the stage, her head held high, her spine straight, illuminated by the bright, golden spotlight. Behind her, through the glass balcony doors, Shawn stood frozen in the dark, watching her step onto the highest stage in the world. He tried to take a step forward, but Nadia grabbed his arm, screaming at him about hotel bills and credit cards. Shawn looked at Janet one last time. At the girl who used to take photos of his profile from afar, the girl who used to stay one step behind him, the girl who had loved him with everything she had. Now, she was glowing under 1,000 lights, surrounded by standing ovations. And he couldn't even reach the shadow she left behind. Janet took the Crystal Award from the board director, stepped up to the podium, and looked out over the sea of applauding faces. She didn't look back at the balcony. She didn't look back at her past. She smiled at the bright, beautiful horizon stretching out before her, and began to speak.